The proposition, Olivia Reyes, balanced 3 plates along her forearm with practiced ease. Weaving through the crowded upscale restaurant where crystal glasses caught the light and conversations hummed beneath soft jazz. At 26, she'd mastered the art of invisibilities, smiling just enough to be polite, disappearing just quickly enough to avoid unwanted attention. Tonight, however, someone was watching. Table 14 again, her coworker Daniela whispered as they passed in the service. Corridor, the guy hasn't touched his Bordeaux, but he's been following you with his eyes all night. Olivia glanced toward the corner table where a man sat alone, his tailored suit and casual confidence marking him as different from the other patrons. He wasn't just wealthy, he carried himself with the ease of someone born into it. Probably. Calculating how to complain about the service, Olivia murmured, adjusting her already perfect tie. Her rent was due in 3 days, and her brother's medical bills had arrived that morning. She couldn't afford any complaints. When her shift ended, at midnight, rain pattered against the awning as she counted her tips. Not enough. Never enough lately. Ms. Reyes. She turned to find table 14 standing beside her, somehow managing to look completely dry despite the downpour. Up close, she noticed the warm brown of his eyes, unexpected against his sharp features. James Harrington, he said, extending his hand. I own this restaurant. Among other things, of course he did. Olivia had heard of the Harrington tech empire, but had never connected it to her workplace. She shook his hand firmly, determined not to be intimidated. Is there a problem with the service, Mr. Harrington? Quite the opposite. I have a proposition. For you. Something in his hesitation made her raise an eyebrow. I'm not interested in those kinds of propositions. To her surprise, he laughed, a genuine sound that softened his face. Nothing inappropriate, I assure you. I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for a weekend at my family estate. You'll be compensated generously. Olivia stared at him. You're joking. I never joke about business, he replied, then seemed to reconsider. Well, rarely. My parents are determined to see me settled with someone from their approved social circle. I'm equally determined to prove a point about their outdated values, and I'm the point. Olivia frowned. You're articulate. Composed under pressure, I've watched you handle difficult customers all evening and you're clearly not impressed by wealth. He named a sum that made her breath catch. 3 days of your time, no expectations beyond maintaining the appearance of a relationship. Olivia thought of her brother Ben, 19 and brilliant, whose rare autoimmune condition had derailed his college plans and drained their savings. The amount Harrington offered would cover Ben's treatments for months. Why me? There must be dozens of women in your circle who'd play along. That's precisely why it can't be someone from my circle. My parents would know immediately. His eyes met hers directly. You have an authenticity that can't be faked. The irony wasn't lost on her. You want me to be authentically fake. I want you to be yourself just as my girlfriend. He handed her a business card. Think about it. Call me tomorrow. As he walked away, disappearing into a sleek black car, Olivia clutched the card. The rain had soaked through her thin jacket, but she barely noticed. Her practical mind said this was madness, but the part of her that stayed up nights worrying about Ben's future whispered that sometimes it's madness was the only rational choice. By morning, she knew what her answer would be. One weekend of pretense might be worth a future of possibilities if it meant entering a world where she didn't belong with a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenient solution to his problem. Masks and mirrors, the Harrington estate sprawled across 30 acres of manicured perfection, the main house rising from the landscape like something from another century. As the car pulled through wrought iron gates, Olivia fought the urge to press her face against the window like a child. Remember, James said beside her, we met at a charity gala 3 months ago. You work in arts education close enough to waitressing that you won't trip over details? I actually do have a degree in art history, Olivia replied, smoothing her borrowed dresser, simple but elegant navy blue piece that probably costs more than her monthly rent. Before life happened, something flickered across James's face. You never mentioned that? You never asked. She kept her tone light, but held his gaze until he looked away first. The weekend's cast of characters proved more complex than Olivia had anticipated, Richard and Eleanor Harrington greeted their son with reserved affection that seemed to mask deeper expectations. Eleanor's eyes assessed Olivia with practiced subtlety, while Richard's questions probed for weaknesses in their story. Arts education. How fascinating, Eleanor said over aperitifs. In a sitting room larger than Olivia's entire apartment. Which institutions have you worked with? Olivia named the community center where she volunteered on weekends, teaching art. 2 underprivileged children. The truth was easier to maintain than fiction. Charitable, Eleanor replied, the pause speaking volumes. James's hand found Olivia's knee beneath the table, a gesture meant to appear affectionate, but which felt like a warning. She resisted the urge to swat it away. Dinner brought more players. Onto the stage, Patricia Wellington and her daughter Sophia, old family friends who clearly represented the parents' preferred match. Thomas Harrington, James's younger brother, whose knowing smirks suggested he saw through their charade. And several business associates whose names blurred together in a haze of wealth and influence. James tells us you met at the children's hospital benefit, Patricia said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Strange, I don't recall seeing you there. Perhaps you were too busy with the photographer from Vanity Fair, James interjected smoothly. Olivia was actually helping organize the art auction, not just posing for pictures. The subtle barb didn't go unnoticed. Sophia's perfect features hardened momentarily. As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself drawing on skills honed through years of customer service, reading the room, deflecting tension, maintaining composure. But unlike her waitressing job, here she couldn't disappear into the background. All eyes watched, evaluated, judged. Later, in the privacy of adjacent guest rooms connected by a shared sitting area, Olivia kicked off the painful heels James had insisted she wear. Your mother asked if I'd ever been to the south of France, she said, collapsing onto a velvet sofa. I think she was disappointed when I said my international travel was limited to a semester in Mexico, which you actually did. James loosened his tie, looking more human than he had all evening. Yes, studying Frida Kahlo and Mexican muralism. She rubbed her feet, wincing. I didn't lie once tonight, except about us. That was our deal. James poured 2 drinks from a crystal decanter. They'll look for inconsistencies tomorrow. My family treats conversation like corporate espionage. Why go through all this? Why not just tell them you'll choose your own partner when you're ready? He handed her a glass, their fingers brushing briefly. You've met them now. Do they strike you as people who take no for an answer? They seem like people who've never heard it, she replied, taking a sip and feeling the expensive liquor warm her throat. For a moment, James looked almost vulnerable. When you inherit an empire, you inherit its chains. He raised his glass. In a mock toast, to successfully fooling the unfoolable. Olivia clinked her glass against his. But as she watched him gaze out the window toward the distant lights of the city, she wondered who was truly being fooled in this elaborate performance. Unexpected harmony Saturday morning found them walking the grounds, maintaining their couple's facade for the benefit of watching eyes from the house. The gardens bloomed with late summer splendor, a private Eden curated by generations of Harrington. Wealth. Your parents are hosting 30 people for dinner tonight, Olivia said, her arm loosely linked with James's. Is that normal for them? Yes. Every gathering is a strategic maneuver. He guided her toward a secluded path lined with ancient oaks. Tonight's event has been planned for months. You were a last-minute wrench in their machinery. Should I be flattered or terrified? His laugh surprised her again, genuine, unguarded. Both. My father has already run a background check on you. Olivia stopped walking. That's invasive and probably illegal. Wait. Welcome to my world. James shrugged, but there was tension beneath the casual gesture. Don't worry, your record is impressively clean, though they did discover your brothers. Medical situation. Heat flushed Olivia's face. I'm not ashamed of working hard to support my brother. You shouldn't be. Something shifted in his expression. My parents interpret struggle as failure. I've never understood that some people face obstacles they didn't create. They reached a small building nestled among the trees of Glasswald. Studio filled with light and canvases. My sanctuary, James said, unlocking the door. The one place they don't intrude. Inside, paintings lined the walls, landscapes, abstracts, studies of light and shadow. Not the work of a casual hobbyist, but of someone with genuine passion and talent. You painted these? Olivia moved from canvas to canvas, seeing a depth to James that hadn't been visible before. My dirty secret. He watched her examining his work. The great technological innovator who'd rather be covered in acrylics. They're beautiful. She meant it. Why hide this? Harringtons build empires, not art careers. He picked up a brush, twirling it between his fingers. My great-grandfather was a painter. He gave it up to start the family business. Some traditions are unspoken, but understood. Olivia noticed a half-finished canvas's cityscape at dawn, the light breaking over buildings with a hope that seemed at odds with the man she thought she knew. May I? She asked, gesturing to the paints. Hours dissolved as they worked side by side. Conversation flowing naturally about technique, influence, the healing power of creation. James showed her his collection of art books, their shared passion bridging the chasm between their worlds. When he mentioned an obscure Mexican muralist she'd studied, Olivia found herself explaining the political contexts with an enthusiasm she hadn't felt in years. You should be teaching, he said, watching her gesture animatedly. Not serving overpriced wine to people who can't appreciate it in another life, perhaps? She dabbed blue onto her canvas. Dreams don't pay medical bills. They should. Simple declaration hung between them, filled with possibilities neither acknowledged by late afternoon. They returned to the house to prepare for the evening's event. As they neared the manicured lawns, James stopped suddenly. Thank you, he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. I haven't shared that place with anyone before. Olivia felt something dangerous unfurl within her chest, warmth that had nothing to do with their arrangement and everything to do with the man beneath the mask. As his fingers lightly brushed hers, the pretense they'd constructed seemed to waver, revealing something neither had anticipated. That evening, as they danced beneath crystal chandeliers, the performance felt less like acting and more like possibility. When James introduced her as the woman who's changed my perspective, the words carried an undercurrent of truth that frightened them both. Truth and consequences. Sunday arrived with the weight of endings. Olivia packed the few belongings she'd brought, leaving the borrowed clothes laid carefully across the bed. Through the window, she watched staff dismantling the previous nights. Elaborate decorations, erasing all evidence of celebration. Just as her presence would soon be erased from the Harrington narrative, a knock interrupted her thoughts. Eleanor would like to speak with you, James said, his expression unreadable. In the conservatory, Olivia found James's mother among exotic plants, a teacup balanced perfectly in manicured hands. The glass walls created an illusion of openness, while maintaining complete separation from the outside world. Please sit. Eleanor indicated a chair opposite her. I thought we might have a moment alone before you depart. Of course. Olivia maintained the poised exterior she'd perfected over the weekend. Though her heartbeat quickened, Eleanor set down her cup with deliberate precision. You're not the first, you know. I'm sorry. The first distraction James has brought home to derail our expectations. Eleanor's smile was polite but empty of warmth. Though I admit, you're more convincing than previous attempts. Olivia kept her expression neutral. I'm not sure I understand. My dear, I've built and destroyed corporate empires. Did you think I wouldn't recognize a temporary arrangement when I saw one? Eleanor's gaze was surgical in its assessment. What was the price? I'm curious. The accusation stung more than Olivia expected. With respect, Mrs. Harrington, you don't know me. I know your type. Ambitious, intelligent, seeing an opportunity. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. Let me offer you a better one. Walk away today. No drama, no lingering attachment. There will be compensation, of course, more than whatever James promised. Anger flared in Olivia's chest. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, dear, especially those who claim they don't. Eleanor's expression softened marginally. But James has responsibilities beyond himself. Harrington legacy demands certain sacrifices. Like his art. Olivia challenged before she could stop herself. Something flickered across Eleanor's face. Surprise, perhaps. So he showed you his little hobby. Interesting. She rose gracefully. Consider my offer. James will return to his real life once this rebellious phase passes. Don't be collateral damage when he does. The conversation replayed in Olivia's mind as they drove back to the city, silence stretching between them like a widening gulf. The fantasy of the weekend was dissolving, reality reasserting itself with each passing mile. Your mother offered. To pay me to disappear? Olivia finally said as the city's skyline came into view. James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Did she name a price? Does it matter? No. He glanced at her. But I'm sorry. Don't be. She was right about one thing: this was always temporary. When they reached her apartment building, the contrast between their worlds never more apparent than... In that moment, James handed her an envelope. As agreed, he said, his corporate mask firmly back in place. Olivia took it. The weight of the weekend's deception suddenly unbearable. Goodbye, James. She didn't look back as she entered her building, the envelope heavy in her hands. Her apartment, with its secondhand furniture and water-stained ceiling, the entire weekend seemed like a dream from which she'd finally awakened. Ben was asleep on the couch. Medical textbooks spread around him, evidence of his determination to reclaim his future. Looking at her brother, Olivia knew she would make the same choice again, regardless of the unexpected cost to her heart. Later that night, she opened the envelope to find not only the agreed payment, but a small, exquisite painting of the dawn. Cityscape from James's studio, inscribed with words that blurred as her eyes filled with tears. Some art belongs in museums. Some belongs where it can remind us of what's real. Beyond pretense, 3 weeks passed. Olivia returned to her routine, serving perfect meals to people who barely noticed her, helping Ben with physical therapy, teaching weekend art classes at the community center. The check from James had paid Ben's outstanding medical bills, with enough left to cover 3 months of rent, a temporary reprieve from constant worry. The painting hung in their small living room, its beauty both comfort and torment. She hadn't heard from James since that day, hadn't expected to. Their worlds had briefly intersected before continuing on their separate trajectories. It's like planets whose gravitational pull wasn't quite strong enough to alter established orbits. Until Wednesday afternoon, when she walked into her art class, to find 20 new easels, professional-grade supplies, and a renovated space where peeling paint and fluorescent lights had been replaced with proper lighting and fresh walls. Anonymous donor, the center director explained, beaming. They've also established a scholarship fund for students who want to pursue art education. Olivia knew immediately. The gesture was too specific, too personal to be coincidence. At evening, as she left the restaurant after her shift, a familiar black car waited by the curb. Her heart stuttered as the window lowered to reveal James. Looking less polished than she remembered, his tie loosened, a day's stubble shadowing his jaw. You shouldn't have done it, she said before he could speak. Which part? The art supplies. Or the scholarships? Both. Any of it. She crossed her arms. I don't need your guilt money. It wasn't for you. He stepped out of the car to face her. It was for the kids who remind me of you, talented, passionate, derailed by circumstances beyond their control. The sincerity in his voice gave her pause. Why are you here, James? I resigned as CEO. The words hung in the night air between them. Thomas will take over. He's always been better suited for it anyway. Olivia stared at him. Your parents must be thrilled. They're adjusting to the concept. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I've started an art therapy foundation for chronically ill youth. We're partnering with 3 hospitals initially, including the one where your brother receives treatment. James... She didn't know what to say. I'm not here to impress you with grand gestures. He took a step closer. The weekend with you wasn't just about defying my parents. It showed me a different way to exist, one where legacy isn't defined by what you inherit, but by what you choose to create. A taxi honked nearby, breaking the moment. Olivia became acutely aware of standing on a public sidewalk in her Waitress uniform, having a conversation that could alter everything. I can't be your rebellion, she said softly. You're not. His eyes held hers. You're my clarity. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was not money, but a flyer for an exhibition new. Artists Unknown Names, hosted by the James Harrington Foundation. Your work deserves to be seen, he said, if you want. No strings, no pretense. Olivia thought of the canvases stacked in her closet, the dreams she'd carefully packed away. Why do this? Because when I was pretending with you, I was more myself than I've ever been. James reached for her hand, his touch tentative. You're ever manned? I don't know if there's anything real between us beyond that weekend. But I'd like the chance to find out, not as a billionaire and a waitress, just as two artists figuring out what matters. The restaurant door opened behind them, spilling light onto the sidewalk. Her co-workers emerged, curious eyes taking in the scene. Two worlds colliding again, this time without scripts or expectations. Olivia looked at the man before her, not the mask he wore for his family or the role he'd played in their arrangement, but the person who'd shared his sanctuary, who'd seen her authentic self and responded not with judgment, but with recognition. I'm free on Thursdays, she said finally, a smile breaking through her carefully maintained reserve. And I don't need expensive restaurants or grand gestures. It's just honesty. Honesty. James nodded, his expression lightening. I can work with that. As they walked toward a small coffee shop on the corner, neutral territory belonging to neither of their worlds, Olivia realized that sometimes the most valuable things couldn't be bought or sold. Sometimes they emerged unexpectedly from the spaces between truth and pretense, and the moments when masks fell away to reveal the possibilities beneath.